Hi everybody, my name is Tracy. I'm a senior in the UConn Puppet Arts program, and I'm here today to give a little hand shadow workshop. So all the materials you're going to need are a flashlight. I'm personally using my phone light, but you can use whatever you want, and some sort of wall, floor, ceiling, anything that you can project light onto. I'm also using a little bit of paper and some scissors to make a couple of extra shapes to really enhance these shadow puppets, but you by no means have to use those. So I think a great way to start off is hand shadows have you contorting your hands in a lot of funny ways. So I think it'd be nice to do a few hand stretches, both to just get ready to make these puppets, and also you've probably been at a computer a lot, typing a bunch of things. It's good to sort of stretch your hands out every once in a while. And the first stretch I like to do is just sort of wiggle all your fingers, get everything really loosened up. They've been a lot of weird contortions. You can also, while wiggling these, roll your wrists. You can roll them clockwise, counterclockwise, any direction you want, as long as they're sort of moving. And that'll really loosen everything up, get some blood flowing, all that good stuff. I also like to, you can take your wrist with one hand, push your hand vertical like this, and take your other hand and kind of just gently push on your wrist. And that'll really sort of get that more flexible. You can do this in both directions. Make sure you're getting a nice stretch, but don't push yourself if anything hurts. Go as far as you need to. And you can do that on the other hand also. Get a nice even stretch through the whole thing. And then I also like to, you can take one hand and just kind of pull on all of your fingers a little bit. And then that'll stretch those muscles out. This is another one where you're not really going to want to pull too hard. You're just going to want to do something really gentle. Make sure everything's nice and relaxed. You can wiggle your fingers again, get all of that out. And then this stretch, this is a bit more of an exercise, kind of getting you into that hand shadow movement. But if you take your hand and you put it either on a table or up against a wall, or you can even just rest it on your other arm. And if you take each of your fingers one at a time, and then lift them up without lifting any of the other fingers, and you can do this on both hands. I find it gets really tricky with your ring finger. Sometimes you'll move that, and then maybe your middle finger or your pointer will also want to move. But if you can get one at a time, then that's going to be really cool and helpful for these. You can also do, in the description of this video, we mentioned a couple different books that I got a lot of these hand shadows from. One of those also has a lot of different hand stretches that really help you get into the shadow puppet hand shadow puppet sort of mindset. They give you a lot of the different hand contortions you'll be doing with these shadows. The first one is you take just your pinky and you can bring that up and down. And then you'll do sort of the rock and roll peace and love sign. If you do that with these two fingers, you can move both of those. And then from here, you'll keep these two fingers down and take your other two and just kind of bend your pointer and your pinky finger, just in a little tiny bend. And then you'll do that again, but while these two center fingers are stuck up. And you'll find that these fingers are gonna wanna bend with that too, because you're sort of used to grabbing things with your hands and bending everything at once. But if you can get just these two, since I like to think that a lot of hand puppetry, at least getting things to work, is about really sort of moving all your fingers independently. And then you can stretch out just these two fingers on the ends. Your pinky and your thumb, they're going to be really helpful for a lot of different hand shadows we'll work on today. And then you can also do this sort of Star Trek Spock stretch. That gets a lot of your fingers really all stretched out. And then the last one we're going to do is if you sort of bring all your fingers in and then bring them back out again. So you can bring them in and kind of squeeze a little bit, and then you can stretch them all out. Bring them in, stretch it back out, sort of that usual. And then I feel pretty warmed up. If you guys want some more time to stretch, feel free to bring this video back, run through those a second time. But I think it's time to move on to some shadow puppets. So I'll get my little phone light. I'll get that turned on right against this wall here. All set up nice like that so that you can see me, see my hands, but then also see what these shadows are going to look like on the wall. Now the first shadow I think it's very sort of simple to ease into, but also a very fun one. You can get a couple shapes out of this. You're going to take both of your hands like this, and your thumbs are going to be sticking out, and then you're going to sort of cross your thumbs together. Now you can kind of link those into each other. You can like pull them down more, whatever you want to do. But you'll sort of see on the wall over here, if you bend all your other fingers, you get kind of a bird shape. So you could say bird, you could say seagull, you could say butterfly, whatever you want to say that it is. One of the things I also really like about hand shadows is there's a lot of flexibility in what the creature is, but like what sound you make while you're moving this puppet can also kind of help. So if it's a bird, you can be like, caw, caw, or if it's a butterfly, you can get a lot of. And then this puppet can kind of transform because you can take all these spread together fingers and stretch them out like this. And then you've got, I like to say that it's a spider, but I've heard people say crab before. Either works, but you can sort of get that wiggly, ooey gooey, all those fingers moving around kind of motion. And that's just, again, my hands linked together like this, and then all my fingers separated like that. All right, I'm not seeing any questions on this in the comments, but feel free at any point if like what I'm doing with my hands is confusing, or if you have any questions about anything related to these shadow puppets, shout it out and I'm here for you. Second one I like to move on to, this one is a one-handed hand shadow, but there's a lot of different expression you can get with it. So you're gonna rotate your hand like this, and then you're gonna stick your thumb out here, and your thumb is gonna sort of act as the arm. And then you're going to take the tips of all 4 of your fingers and kind of bend them like this. And you'll see that you get sort of a little person shape where like your pinky finger is going to kind of act as the chin. So if you wiggle that a bit, it looks like he's talking. And then you're going to sort of get in the lines of all your knuckles up here, you're going to get a face. So you can really wiggle all your different fingers and knuckles around, and that'll really play around with the different face shapes. So there's this one person, and then you can also take your other hand, do the same kind of motion of thumb out, and then all your fingers in this little crutch like that. And then you've got 2 people, and they can wave hi to each other. They can elbow bump if they want to practice good social distancing. They can stand 6 feet apart, all those fun things. And what I also really like to do, this is where the paper comes in for some extra fun. You can cut out a little hat out of paper and stick it right there in between your pointer and middle finger. And then your little person's got a hat. You've got a little wizard. Your little wizard can do magic and make all sorts of fun magic shadows. I also like, you can take this same person, that exact same shape. You can hold up a little boat under it. And then you've got a little person who's out on the ocean doing some fun boating. And a third one, I really like this person. It's very versatile. You can take your hand just like this, just flat out with your palm and your thumb is up, and you can make sort of a little horse, and then your person can go on some magic adventure riding this horse. You can make a knight hat, you can make a cowboy hat, whatever you want to do. But you can get the brum, 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 yeehaw, brum, 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 brum. All sorts of stuff, just with the one hand, and whatever else you want to add on. So I really like people. Bunch of fun shadows with them. What else can we do? Oh, duck! I also have duck planned. Duck is one of my favorites. So duck is a little bit trickier. You've got to get some funky finger action going, but I think everyone can handle it. So you're going to want to take your pointer finger right here, and then while your hand is flat, you're going to want to kind of push it up and rest it on your middle knuckle. So it's going to sort of make this rounded shape. And it might be a little tricky to get this right away. That's kind of how the stretches help. But as long as you're making sort of an eyeball, and if you want an easier version of that, you can just kind of curl your hands. But like that eyeball is going to add a lot of fun. And then once these are all down like this, you'll kind of stack your other fingers, and then you can take your pinky, as I'm doing right here, and that'll make a sort of on like a duck character. So you can do like a whack, 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 whack. And then if your thumb rested right here in between the 2 of them, and you can open the mouth of duck, whack, and you can have a tongue stick out, so it goes whack, 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 whack. And that's a lot of fun with the duck. You can also do, if you take your spare hand right here and stick it up like that, you can kind of wiggle your hand over here and have maybe a more elegant swan bobbing through the water. Ooh, a question coming in. What's the most difficult hand shadow to create? I think a lot of the difficulty for me with hand shadows isn't necessarily this hand shadow is really hard and that hand shadow is really easy. A lot of it's how long you've been working for and how you can stretch your fingers. Everybody has a different hand shadow that's like their hardest. But I think as long as you really practice and put the work in, you can get any of them done. And there's always different sort of little edits you can do to make one thing easier than another. So I don't know if there's necessarily a most difficult, but ones that you have more challenge with and ones that take a lot more practice. So we've got our fun duck. Duck is one of the easier ones for me, but for some people it could be really hard. It just takes practice. So after our duck, ooh, here's another one I had planned. So I really like, this one works for me as like a wolf or a dog, or it could be a fox, just kind of any animal that has like 2 ears and a muzzly shape. So you're going to take your one hand flat like this, just like a handshake, and then you're going to take your other hand on that and sort of loop it around with this other thumb pointed up, and you'll see that these are kind of forming 2 ears, and then you've got, just like with the person, this lump of knuckles that's going to give you kind of the facial features. So depending on how you bend all your knuckles in it, you can have either a really bumpy face or you can get something a little bit smoother, and then that's going to sort of either make like a wolf or a dog or a fox, whatever kind of thing you want. And the really fun thing about hand shadows is, since this is like a 3D object, you can kind of rotate your hands and the wolf can kind of look around in 3D space. So we can go, ow, 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 and sort of wiggle its ears and And it's all about just keeping those together, knowing what to move and what to keep still. So like my thumbs, I can move a lot, and I can sort of move my the tips of my fingers to kind of get things to smell. But my knuckles here, and then these kind of like insides of my palms, I'm going to want to keep really still. It gets you that fun shape. Let's see. Ooh, deer. Deer is a good one to go after following dog. So we've got that sort of similar same dog shape, and then if you want, it doesn't necessarily have to be exactly the dog shape. You can keep this one. You can kind of rotate a bit more if you want an eyeball. But the big thing with the deer is you have this sort of base head structure on one hand, and then on the other hand, you're going to sort of turn all your fingers around, and you can see all of them, and they're all pointed in a different direction. And then this is going to sort of make a big deer shape, since we've got the head in one hand and then all of these antlers in the other one. And maybe you have a baby deer and it only has a few antlers, or you have a really big deer and it's got all the antlers. Whatever you want to do. It's your hands. It's your wall. These are your shadow puppets. Whatever makes you happy, whatever brings you joy. But you can get this shape of a deer, or you can kind of get that shape of a deer if you want to emphasize it eye, or if you want to emphasize it having kind of this other ear. And then it can still smell like all the other deer. It can wiggle its ears and sort of hear different things and turn around. Lots of fun stuff. Feel free to play with it. Let's see, what else did I have? Ooh, this shadow. This one. I don't think it's the hardest one. This is one of the easier ones for me, but it is my personal favorite hand shadow. This one is the snail. So you're going to take one hand. You're going to leave it really flat. You can have your whole arm if you want. You can have just your hand, whatever you want to do. You can take your other hand. You're going to make a little fist knuckle shape that looks like a rock of a snail. Plop that right on top. If you want to get really crazy, you can stick 2 fingers up just like this. You'll kind of rotate these to make a circle and then get the little, it's sort of like the classic little bunny foo-foo shadow, but just a little flatter with a rock on top of that. And then you can just slither along. You can kind of, his eyes can like poke in and out. You got a fun little snail. He takes his sweet time. He doesn't have anywhere to be speedy. Just slithering along. I love the snail. Favorite hand shadow of all time. I don't know what it is. I think he's really cute. I like that he doesn't have to be anywhere fast. He's taking his time. I feel like he's always having a good day. Snail shadow. Great one. Let's see. Ooh, we talked about magician already. We talked about, okay. Here's another really fun one. This is also one of my favorites. Rooster. I found out about this one the other day. It came from the book. So you're going to want to take both of your hands, and you're going to want to make these sort of like claw shapes where you have all of your knuckles down in little lines like this, but you're going to want to make sure that they're not like stuck together, that there's space in between all of them. Knuckle has a little bit of space in between, but that they are all kind of folded. And this might be something that like takes a little while. If you want to really hold this down, there's going to be a bit of strain on it. And you're going to take all of these and you're going to sandwich your hands just together. And so you'll see that when you're looking at the shadow on the wall, there's kind of space in between all of them. You can hold it together if that's easier for you to do. I like the kind of separated one because I think for this rooster shadow that it looks really nice. And then you've got your two thumbs here, and those sort of work as the mouth to go like, and it can like bend over and it can like peck for things, peck, 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 peck. It can turn around if you've got some really dexterous arms and like peck, 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 peck. It's got that same head tilt on it. Peck, 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 peck. Lots of fun stuff. Great rooster, one of my favorites. Oh, sorry everybody, quick technical difficulty. There we go. Okay, everything's all set. Sorry about that, everyone. And yeah, does anybody have any questions at this point so far about any of the shadows that I've done or any shadow puppetry questions in general? I know we answered the other one earlier, but I'd just like to take a second. Oh, sorry about that. Technical difficulties. Working remotely. We all know how it is. So we've got quick rundown of everything again. Just a quick rundown of all the shadows. Bird, spider, we got a person. We can put that person on a horse. We can put that person in a boat. We can get a little hat. Make that person be magical. We've got our duck and quack. We've also got off of the duck, we've got our little swan. And we can do a little wolf or a dog, and that can bark. We've got our big fancy deer. We've got our fun little snail. We have our neat little rooster. If you have any questions about shadows going forward, in the two books that are listed in the description, the first one is The Art of Shadowography, and the second one is Hand Shadows to be Thrown Upon the Wall. Those will have a lot more listings of other hand shadows that you can do. Oh my gosh, I completely forgot to mention, silly Tracy, a very important thing with hand shadows like this is the angle of the light that you have. So the light I have right now is sort of pointing straight on at this wall. But the angle of where the light is and the angle of where your hands are can do a lot for what your shadow is going to look like. So like we talked about a little bit earlier, I was kind of rotating my hands with these, and that can add a lot of depth. But we also can do, if I take the light that I have for my phone and turn it upside down, it's going to cast upwards a lot more. So like I can hold my hand really close to the light and make a big shadow that's sort of pushing more up on the wall rather than more forward. Or I can hold my hands really close to the wall and really far away from the light, and that's going to make something a lot smaller. So depending on what you're doing for your shadow show, how big you want your characters or how small you want them or what kind of angle, where the light's placed and where your hands are in relation to the light is going to be really important. So like I can have a shadow show where I have like a really tiny person who's like walking through the woods or something, and then they can come across a really big magician. And that's just a matter of, if you can kind of see my hands here, one hand is really close to the wall and the other hand is really close to the light. And then that's going to make sort of a different scale so that this sort of wizard character can go, "Hey-yo, magician!" And then maybe our hand shadow person changes into like a little horse. And the person goes, "Yippee!" And then the magician shrinks down, and then the magician rides the little horse person away. Ooh, another question. Do you ever do shadow shows that you can't be seen, maybe through a piece of cloth? I've seen things like that, and I'm just curious how it works. Oh, that the performer can't be seen. Yes, so what that's going to be, if you want your performer hidden, there's a lot of different things you can do. You can put up, exactly like you're saying in this comment, either a cloth screen or a paper screen, any, cloth or paper are the two main ones, but any sort of material that it's thin enough that light can go through. You're gonna kind of set up the light, like it's light person screen in such a way that the light is coming through and you can see the hands, but not the whole person. So traditionally, where hand shadows kind of come from there's a lot of different, there were, in sort of vaudeville era, a lot of magicians and other people who used hand shadows as a really early form of television. So what they would do is they would get a big fabric screen and they would put that up, and most of it would be black fabric, but there'd be a little white fabric in the middle, just a small circle, so that they could stick their hands into this circle, and all you would see would be the hands of it and not really anything else. So like with this piece of paper here, I think I can kind of give a demonstration. If there's a little circle cut in the middle, just like that. So you could pretend that this is on a really big scale, and you set this up in front of your light so that all you're really seeing is everything else is blacked out, but there's this circle of light in the middle. And then you can kind of stick your hand into that circle of light, and then you'll see the fingers and your hand shadow through that, but you won't really see anything else. And that's sort of, if you're working on a bigger level or if you're working in more of a performance space, that's how you're going to be able to get that to shine through. A lot of these, thank you for tuning in, everybody. I'm also seeing a lot of the thank yous in these comments, and I'm really happy to hear that everybody's enjoying these workshops so far. Thank you. I also will talk more about how to kind of set up this upcoming Wednesday. I'm also doing a paper shadow workshop. So that's going to be a lot more of these paper figures and a lot less of using your hands. But I think it's good to learn both since you can blend them together for shows that you want to make. And in that, I'll talk a lot more about different types of screens and all different sorts of ways to project, different light sources you can use, how you can get color with shadow puppets, a lot of fun things. I'm really excited for it, and that's going to be here again on Facebook Live at 2 p.m., except it's going to be the Wednesday edition instead of this Friday, and I'll be doing paper shadows. There should be information on our Facebook page for it already, and if there's no other questions, I think I might be all set. I think you guys are all set. I can wait a second and see if there's any other questions from the audience or anything else anybody wants to know. But I'm really thankful that everyone could tune in today, learn about some hand shadows, have some fun on Facebook. No other, I'm just scrolling through our comments really quickly. If there's no other questions, I think I might finish this off. Oh, yes, Ballard Institute. Thank you for commenting. This upcoming Wednesday, April 8th, 2 p.m. Meet me back here. We'll do paper shadows. It'll be really fun. I promise. All right? Are we all? No more questions? I'm going to finish it off. If you do have questions, feel free to leave them after this video is posted, and I'll check it again and see if I can get back to you. Sounds like the ones you'll do next week on Wednesday would go well with the toy theater. Yes! Great comment. Shadows and toy theater blend really well together because you can make a toy theater and then you can stick a piece of white paper in it that's a little bit thinner, and then you can also do shadows behind that if you have a light source set up. You can really blend shadow and toy theater very well together. That's a great comment. Thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for coming, everybody.